Great.
Yep.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate it. Let me make sure our counselors here. We have Counselor Walsh, Counselor Allen, and Council President Letterman. Thank you so much. So thank you for coming. We're going to open the maintenance and development meeting. We're going to be talking about the State Street crossing. Hey, everybody else. I see the library is here. All right, great. So what we wanted to do is come together and have an update and allow for questions and any clarification that might be needed. Chris, do you want to give us the update?
Sure. As you know, back at the beginning of June, we put in the temporary barriers out there. And what we've been doing during the summer is obviously monitoring it, but we've also been doing speed studies out there. And most recently, the police department put the speed boards out again so that we can get speed data. The temporary setup is going to stay until September 9th. And we're staying until September 9th because what we want to do is make sure we get enough data during school. Traffic was very, very low when we started it in June, so we want to make sure that we get that information for traffic when school starts up. School's always a little bit of a mess in the fall to begin with anyway, so I think that'll give us some better data. Throughout the data that we've gathered so far, everything, excuse me, everything seems to be okay. There doesn't seem to be any major issues or problems out there. So what we anticipate is with the data that we're going to get after September, when we pull everything out on the 9th, we're also going to put speed boards back out there to get data after we pull everything down. And then we will be at that point advancing. Step number one is finding some money, but we already know a couple places where we're going to get it. Initiate the design and then move forward with the construction. Our whole goal initially was to be able to do construction this fall. That is probably not going to happen. It'll probably be scheduled for early next spring.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Any counselors have any questions or comments?
I have a question, Madam Chair.
I do too, but I'll let the president.
Go ahead, Council President.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks everybody for being here. Chris, what is causing the delay in construction and causing the construction to be pushed to next spring?
We wanted to get as much data. The data that we got in June when school was still in session, in our opinion, was bad. I want to see what's going to happen with peak traffic. The traffic numbers we got in June were very, very, very low. School, even though it wasn't out until 15th, 18th, something like that, traffic up and down the corridor, the numbers were way down. Now that traffic is back, I want numbers for that period of time to make sure that any of the merge lanes, any of that sort of stuff that we have as part of the design, I have accurate data for. And right now, I don't think I have it.
And so what are you looking for in particular in the data? Is it the queuing, or what are we trying to avoid?
Merging traffic, queuing, especially going, basically in both directions, that if we're going to get backups to, say, School Street and or to Chestnut Street in the eastbound direction, that's going to impact where we start mergers, where, merging lanes and things like that. So we just want to make sure that that works okay, especially with the amount of school buses that are in the area at that time.
So are you saying your intention is after September 9th to remove the temporary barriers that are there now and then leave it as it stands in its current construction up until the spring?
Correct. Yes. We were going to get rid of it anyways for the winter because from a plowing perspective and traffic perspective, we wouldn't be able to control that area. So we wanted to make sure that we got the stuff out of there and got the good data, the speed data afterwards as well. Because one of the things I want to compare it to is when we take the setup down, we're going to continue to have the speed boards out there to gather the traffic data.
And what would change in the construction design based on that?
Length of the project, merge lengths. Do we need to do retiming of traffic signals before and after in both directions? Things like that. Because what we don't want to do is not have that as part of the design and kind of try and react to it after, and that would be very difficult to do. So we want to make sure it's all incorporated.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. I'll say for the record that I am concerned with the delay. The community's been waiting many years for this, and so I expect that we're going to hear from folks concerned relative to it not being in place this fall. I think that was sort of the timeline we were expecting. And so I'm certainly open to hearing from other counselors and members of the community, but I'll say, I'm concerned with the delay.
Counselor Walsh?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And last year when I was the Chair of Maintenance and Development, and I see many familiar faces on this Zoom call, I was joined by Council Letterman in our concern over State Street. And I want to know two things. One, have the people that I see on this call, Elizabeth, Linda, Jean, Betsy, other counselors, have they had input into the design, and what is the design and what is going to make it safer? Because I know I heard from them a lot last year, so I hope you have too.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to welcome Councilor Whitfield and Councilor Perez. Did you want to answer that, Chris?
Yeah, I was just trying to hold on one second here if I can find what I'm looking for.
The design.
I'm just going to share. I was just sharing a plan real quick. What we are proposing at the location is obviously the crossing, and we are going to be proposing a center island. And around that, obviously, if you're going eastbound or westbound approaching the location, there's merge distances or merge areas. So we want to make sure that we have that all set up. There will be a true center island in there as well. So from a design perspective, we then have to deal with the off-road stuff of getting an ADA compliant walkway back and forth, which is not going to be that big of a deal. So from a design perspective, we have the design pretty well laid out. Excuse me, it's just going to be a matter of what happens in each direction up and down on this to make sure that we got it good. And at the same time, as I mentioned, making sure that if we need to touch any of those traffic signals, that we have that taken care of as well. So the preliminary plan that I have there is what was presented as part of the selected options that we were reviewing. Other options had us narrowing towards the center, which I really didn't like because it was just way too much construction work, and really wasn't it wasn't going to be as safe. This is probably separating the roadway much safer as far as I'm concerned.
So let me ask, so for a pedestrian crossing from, say, Classical and going over to the main library, what will be different for them, and how are they going to be safer?
In both directions, either way, when they go to cross the street, they're going to hit the button. Whichever direction that they are going in, there will be a red light. So if somebody is crossing from Classical going north, they get a red light. And when they get to the center, they hit the second button and then be able to, they get a red light there. And then the opposite side, the green will come back on, and then they cross the street at that point. What we didn't want to do, and when we were looking at it from a safety standpoint, of having it on both, for example, if there was no center median and somebody was trying to cross a little bit more than 2 lanes, there was too much, in my opinion, there was just way too much room in the center. And it was also going to start to play havoc because then you're stopping both directions for a longer period of time. So this splits it up, does a little bit better on the traffic management, and also provides a little refuge island in the middle as well, and then gives the person who's crossing the street, gives them 2 secure phases to be able to get across the street.
Okay, well, I'll leave my questions for the people from the area who have been so interested in this issue for a long time, and wait to hear what they have to say about your plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh, and I'm welcoming in Councilor Hurst as well. Councilor Allen?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, Chris, just a little follow-up question on what you just said. So I just want to understand 2 things: what the process for review will be, once September 9th hits, et cetera. Obviously you'll have more data, et cetera, but what will be the process for citizen input and that sort of thing? And the second thing is, I just learned something that I did not know before, maybe my own mistake, but so when we're done with this, people will be able to cross from the parking lot next to Classical to the city library without having to go down to the lights. This is going to provide a way to do that.
Correct.
All right, and that's a 2-phase light. You said they cross to the island and then they hit another one.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. That's
Yep.
good. That's good. And what about the review of the data, once it's September 9th and citizen input and all that sort of thing?
Well, once we have all the data, then we can start doing the design. And at a certain point in that, I would expect that we would probably have another meeting like this where we would present everything. The only other step that I have to do legally in the middle of it is that I have to do some coordination with Mass DOT, which I've already brought them on board. We have to make a modification of the traffic control agreement for State Street. Whenever we do projects through Mass DOT, we have a traffic control agreement. And when we make changes to the roadway, I have to make sure I go back to Mass DOT that they're on board for the changes. They've been involved, so I don't. That's just more of a box that I have to check along the way. And once they've basically approved it, then I can go forward and present everything to the public in a lot more detail and schedules. The other thing that we are doing is, with Mass DOT, there's actually a number of applications we're dealing with them for funding for this project. We've been working with them citywide on a lot of safety issues, and we know that there's going to be implementation of a lot of safety stuff through the city over the next, I'm going to say anytime between now and the next 2.5 years. We're going to be doing a lot of safety features like this around the city. Dealing with corridors like Page Boulevard and, Carew Street, where we're dealing with crossings, pedestrian crossings, and very similar type of things where we'll be doing roadway narrowing, road diets, and things like that. And we're working through that with Mass DOT at this point.
Okay, so I guess that prompts just one more question. So let's assume it goes well to September 9th and assume the citizen input and all that stuff goes along well. So the new State Street will have 1 lane in that area.
In that area will be 1 lane. Yeah, it'll be basically between school and just up from Chestnut Street will be basically 1 lane. When you get to Chestnut Street, that does need to be 2 lanes where there's a big bus stop there. So getting those buses out of the way so that the remainder of the traffic can continue through. So we want to make sure that happens. We also have a little bit of an issue up by School Street as well with a bus stop, but that's farther up towards the School Street intersection. So I don't anticipate an issue with that.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set, Madam Chair, for now.
Thank you, Councilor, and thank you, Chris. Can I ask phone number 413-30 to identify yourself, please?
That's Betsy Johnson. I didn't have enough internet capacity to be on other than on the phone. So
all right, thank you.
I did rejoin that way.
Okay, thanks a lot. All right, so now if the councilors there's no more council questions. Was the public interested in making any comments or asking questions? Yes, Ms. Elizabeth?
Hi, thank you, so much for the meeting, and thanks to all the counselors who are being here. I think what I want to talk about is what Councilor Letterman talked about, which is the communication issues around this project. So first of all, let me just say up front as a disclaimer, I work for the library, but I am not here representing a department in an official way. I'm here as myself, as someone who crosses that street every day. And also I'm here to represent all my coworkers and stuff that I talk to them and then I come to this meeting. I absolutely understand that projects change, right? I work on projects at the library all the time. But I want to remind everyone here that this isn't just about logistics and a budget. It's about people, the people who live in this area, and my colleague who was killed and all the people who live with that every day. I've seen people this summer that we haven't seen in a while, and you get that moment. Anyone who's lost someone knows that moment when someone says to you, "Oh, I'm so sorry about your loss," and you go going about your day, you know, and everything was fine, and all of a sudden you remember, right? Or you have that email that you come across from her, or you get a call from someone who says, "I'd really like to come to that computer class, but I'm afraid to park across the street." And I come to work every day, and on Mondays I drive up that State Street and I look and the barrels are still there, and I don't know why, because no one has told us that. They went up at the beginning of the summer for a few weeks and then they never came back down. And they've moved all over the place and cars had hit them and they're not on the lines anymore. And they're just still there. And here we are 2+ months later. Because there's been no communication on this, I have Google alerts set up with all these keywords to give me a hint if there's any news about the crossing. And so that's another little shock when I get an email like the one I got a week or two ago about Western Mass News with a little throwaway line in it saying that the construction would happen next spring. And that was the first time I knew that the construction wasn't going to happen this fall. I feel like the city could be helping us by helping us to understand what's happening with the project. And I know it's one of 100 projects for you, but for us, we cross that street every day. And I wish we could get more help from the city on understanding why changes are happening and when they're happening, even if it's just an email, even if it's just a phone call. So it's not something that every day we're thinking about. I work Monday nights. Last Monday was the first time that I realized it was getting dark again by the time I get out at 8. And I was distressed. And I wish better explanations and better communication was forthcoming, because it's been 9 months, but it's still every day here. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate that. Hopefully we can change that. I'm going to recognize Councilor Whitfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say to Ms. Elizabeth, thank you for sharing. Hear those testimonies. City needs to hear those testimonies, because there are plenty of times where we get a phone calls as city councilors about no communication. How come people didn't know certain information? And I think as a city, we have to do better in communicating. So I just wanted to ask Chris if there is a communication plan in place. Can we, I don't know, is there a way we could use robocall or something just to let people know this is happening? Here's the next phase, here's the next steps. If there's not a communication plan, can we work to get one going? Because I think that, and it's not just your department, Chris, and I'm not picking on you, but across the board in the city, we lack adequate communication from city departments. So I just wanted to see what your department plan on doing about communication.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield.
What we've tried to be doing on all of our projects is at least on a weekly or every 2 week basis is posting whatever we can about updates on projects on our Facebook page. We have a couple major projects going on right now that South Branch Parkway as an example, and a few others, our paving program, et cetera. So one of the things that we were working on this was when we knew, and again, our extension to September was something that we determined probably 2.5 weeks ago or so. And we wanted to be simply because the data that we had really didn't give us what we wanted. So what we will probably be doing is posting, I can post something up on our Facebook page about this, in the next day or so. That brings, that gives a lot more detail, obviously, to this group of people here and to others as well. And that's usually what we try and do, is update all of our stuff on our Facebook page.
And I appreciate that. Just as a follow-up, Counselor, Facebook page is great, but with the digital divide that we have in this country and in Springfield, there'll be a lot of people that miss out on the information if we just rely on Facebook. Some people don't even have Facebook. So I'm wondering if we can get some type of mailing out, especially to the folks that live in the community where the construction is taking place, even if we just start there with a smaller mailing, because I know it does cost to get mailers out, but those folks really need to know. The library staff needs to know. Maybe we can get emails out to the library when these things are happening, especially in their areas or their communities, or just get it out to the library anyway, because a lot of people do visit the library and they can get information from the libraries, all the libraries. And that's an easy fix, because you can easily send it to Jean. She can send it to the staff, and, they can post up the information. I mean, I think that if the departments work together, they all are city departments, and we post the information as many places as we can, that'd be great. Because I know people that just go to the library because they don't have access to computers and the internet and things like that. And so maybe if we could just try a little harder to work together. But I mean, Facebook is great, but we have a huge digital divide going on right now. And so folks are going to miss that information. And I just don't want them to miss out on the information that they should rightfully get.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Perez?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I was on the same page of Councilor Whitfield, but I was going to ask Chris, the city has a web that the community could go in, because you know what, the issue is not only the State Street. Lately, I've become like the yellow pages of what the projects are going on and knowing the projects. How could we create a web or something that the community could find out if they go to this type of project? And I think that's food for thought for the future, but we need to create those projects, meaning that we have so many projects going on in the city that sometimes we don't know which project is going to come first. For informational purpose, how could we create some type of communication? And that I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Perez. I think Chris is going to answer. Were you going to answer, Chris? If not.
Yeah, I'm hesitating for a second because I'm just trying to pull something up here.
Okay. Should we just could I have another comment while you do that?
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
well, go ahead, Linda.
Actually, I think Deborah's hand was up first.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Deborah? You're muted if you're speaking.
Thank you. Yes, I was having trouble getting to that little microphone. This is Deborah Huber. Chris, my question to you is, where exactly is the single lane going to start and end?
Once I get all the traffic data, that's exactly what we need to figure out. In general, once you pass if you're going westbound, once you pass School Street, the narrowing will start. And once you pass just the end of the where the bus stop is past Central is most likely where it's going to start there as well.
The reason I'm asking is because I have really searched and searched to try and find out, well, first off, what we've noticed in the test period is it's not working. cars are still speeding through there very, very fast. So unless we're going to have raised tables or raised crosswalks and such,
Which it is. It's going, the end result will be a raised table.
okay, because it's not working, and my feeling is that everything I've read about, lane reduction and narrowing of lanes refers to a street, and the distance from Spring Street or School Street down to the library, it's not even it's just a tenth of a mile or something. Like it's just not enough to make drivers get that they have to slow down. They're like, oh, I can see the end point. I don't need to, and they just keep going. So I'm very concerned about the length of this reduction. And it would seem to me that if we could keep the single lane for going straight all the way to East Columbus, and you add the turn lanes, put in a bus lane or whatever, then it might actually work. Whereas right now it's just too short. It seems to be too short a distance to actually have a calming effect on the traffic.
And that's why I want to get all that speed data so we can see how much cars are actually slowing down.
That'll be really helpful.
Yeah. And just to, do you have anything else, Deb?
No, that's my big thing.
Just to go back to a question before, little hard to see here, but the DPW has a project page. It's actually pinned to the top of our Facebook page. It is on our website. It's on the communications department website. That lists all the projects that we are working on in the city. Let's see if, for example, I'm just going to click here, State Street Library pedestrian crossing, just a blurb about it. And when you look at the map in its entirety, just to scan over, we list all of the active, I say major projects that we are doing in the city, and we add them in as a new one pops in and get rid of old ones once they've been completed. But it's on our Facebook page, it's on our web page. There's a little blurb about every project that we're working on.
Thank you so much for that, Chris. I wasn't aware of that, so now I am. Thank you.
No problem. No problem.
Me, yeah, me too. And I just want to make aware the community, because if we were not aware, I think that's what we should be starting to, aware the community that there's a website, and so they could learn the same way we are learning. And how could we communicate that more often to the community where there has been some changes in the project as well? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. Linda?
Thank you. So I'm Linda O'Connell. I am wanting to thank everyone for continuing to have this dialogue. I'm a resident of the Classical Condos, and I'm the vice president of the Armory Quadrangle Civic Association, and concerned also about the communication. I just want to make sure, if I can ask a question, Chris, to make sure I understand the crossing. So people will be crossing only one lane of traffic at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Correct.
And you
Correct.
said they'll get a red light.
Correct.
You're actually talking about a traffic signal that will stop the traffic in that lane.
Correct.
Crossing.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So we're going to
it's hard. I'm sorry, Linda. It's hard to make I wanted to make a comparison. We are doing something similar up by AIC on Wilbraham Road, but that is, since the traffic there is a lot different than it is on State Street, we're not having a middle island on that. It is just one crossing. And I wanted to be able to highlight it. The problem is we're not able to get those mast arms for till like November on that. So I wanted to be able to kind of show people what that is. And but yeah, you will cross one lane, hit the button again. Now the hitting the button is supposed to be relatively instantaneous. Other than a second or two, it will turn yellow, then it will turn red. The person there will get what we've trying to do on the Wilbraham Road one is, rather than the person just standing there not knowing if it's red or not, they get an audible, either audible or visual or both signal that allows them to cross. So that's, you know, getting into the kind of the inside baseball stuff of the design of that. And that's what we're, what the next step is. But with the amount of traffic and some of the speeds that are there, we, you know, I get a little concerned if somebody was going to try to be crossing two lanes of traffic. So this separates it a little bit, and I think will be more safe for the pedestrian.
So,
It's also, as I mentioned, it's a raised table. So, you know, somebody who's going to be flying 40 miles an hour isn't going to be happy when they hit it.
So the traffic light, the signal will be on a yardarm over the street, okay? And the idea of the signals is that people will not get to the center island and then have to wait for an inordinate amount of time to go forward. So they're not going to be stuck with whizzing traffic in front and behind, theoretically. Okay.
Right. Not like when you use a regular pedestrian signal that you have to wait for the cycle to go through to get back to you. This is one of those, it's basically instantaneous when you hit it.
Well, thank you for that clarity. And I wonder if you might just indulge me a little in the data. You had said that you felt your analysis was that you did not have adequate data. Can you talk a little more about how you came to that conclusion, why you were feeling the data was not sufficient, why it will be more sufficient?
The last major study that was done in the area was done as part of the casino opening. And when we did the casino opening, and when we do any major Mass DOT project, we have to do what's called a road safety audit, And the road safety audit gets into analysis of speed and number of vehicles, turning movements, you know, the whole 9 yards within a particular area. The data that we were getting for the number of vehicles and for the number one was the number of vehicles was way down. And so trying to do an analysis
compared to what?
To say back to 2018.
Okay.
So, you know, I know, you know, COVID, all of that, I understand. However, the numbers that we were getting were just way down, even when we started it during school. And what we were anticipating is that the numbers would be way up, go down when school came out, and then would obviously pop back up. So, you know, when we're doing traffic studies now, one of the problems that I'm having, not just for the city, but when there's individual developers who are looking for stuff, when they're doing traffic analyses, I always have to be careful that they're coming back with really low numbers because, you know, certain areas just haven't come back to where they needed to be. So that was one of the things that was extremely concerning to me. And when you don't have those numbers, you don't see traffic backing up the way that it might. And so when you start doing analysis like that, we don't want to design it one way and find out that it doesn't work. So that was the thing. And then number two was the speeds. There was a drop in speeds, obviously, in that area. There has not, other than one or two side swipes, there's been virtually no accidents there. So the merging and everything seemed to be working out okay. And upstream and downstream on those intersections seemed to be okay. But the thing that concerned me most was basically volume in that corridor being way down. And it's even been that way in the winter. Or excuse me, in the summer, I'm sorry.
Thank you for going a little more deeply.
No problem.
One final point to pick up on what the counselors have been saying about communication. I would hope, as the suggestion, could library be emailed? Could that be circulated within that population? And I'm also hoping that there could be an email to the classical condo board so that that could also be circulated within this building. that would be really helpful. And then obviously there will be other buildings. They're not there yet. But I think that those are two, that would be an easy hit for the two directly affected at this moment populations.
And I'll also share it obviously with Betsy for the whole civic association as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, particularly because we also have this summer, excuse me, set up a texting service to many of the residents in the Skyview Towers. So for those, because we have found through this grant we had with the city that many of the residents of that building are not on the internet. Basically, their form of communication is through text received on their phones. So if we receive that kind of information, we can send out text to them.
Great. Thank you so much, Linda and Betsy. Go ahead, Jean.
Thank you, Councillor Govan. Following up on what Linda just said, if we get the information, we will turn right around and share the information with staff, our colleagues at the Springfield museums, and everyone right around that area that is on our mailing list and so forth. I think that would be a really great way to get the word out. And I'd love to hear about that texting program, Betsy. That's fantastic. That surely is the way to reach younger families, for example, among other folks. So I'd be very happy to help facilitate that through the library.
Thank you, Jean. Councilor Letterman has a question.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. Two questions. Chris, first on the actual logistical side, in terms of folks crossing into the protected area and then hitting a secondary signal to get the second lane of traffic to stop. That's not the case at Commerce or at Indian Motorcycle. That stops all 4 lanes of traffic simultaneously, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
I'm just wondering here now where we're going to probably see an equal number of crossings to what we see there with less lanes of traffic. Why the extra step? Because I'm sort of worried about individuals not understanding that they need to initiate the second lane stop. And I'm also worried about just sort of the concept that I think was raised by one of the earlier comments by members of the public in terms of folks being on the protected crossing and cars still, running by them at perhaps a somewhat of a rate of speed. So why the second step? Why can't we stop both lanes?
Well, when in stopping both lanes, then it becomes a X amount of seconds to cross the entire street, number one, and therefore you will have a side of the street that is stopped that won't need to be stopped, which what then that contributes into, which is something that we have in a lot of other places when people come to an intersection and it's stopped because of pedestrians, they don't see pedestrians, they then take a left or a right, or take a right in a lot of cases, right into a pedestrian. So one of the things that I'm very, very concerned about in this location, number one, is speed, especially westbound, because you are going downhill regardless of whether it's a raised crosswalk or not. And being able to give somebody that secondary level of protection. On the other two, up at Commerce, there is at the proposed crossing we're doing here, there is going to be in general much less traffic. Or when I say traffic, I'm talking pedestrian traffic numbers than there is up at Commerce, because Commerce has that huge peak with the kids crossing during morning and afternoon. So that's a little different. And that was an issue at the state level when they were redesigning State Street, simply because of the volume that it was a continuous crossing of students that were going to happen for a period of time. So they treated it just like a regular phase. When you hit the button up there, it actually coordinates with the phase at Federal Street. I want to make sure I got my streets right. Federal and Walnut to then turn red to coordinate with those traffic signals. So there's a delay there. And the same thing up on the upper section of State Street is the same thing there. And that is simply because of the volume of traffic. This area down here, I'm much more concerned about the speed, and I am much more concerned about the visibility. So getting it there, it's basically another step in the safety to make sure this is much, much more safe in this location.
I don't know. I feel like we should be making it simpler for the pedestrian. We're probably not going to solve this in this committee meeting, but I'm concerned with there being 2 stages for the crossing. I don't think that is going to be. I don't think that's going to make quite as much sense, because I can't think of any other crossing in the city that's like that. So I think we should talk about that. I also think
but there's going to be a lot of them. That's going to be the thing in moving forward, is trying to get a lot of these locations where we're having crossing issues. So there's going to be a lot of locations like this that are really going to pump up the safety for pedestrians and bicyclists.
Yeah, I'll want to look at the empirical data on that.
Yeah,
and I'll look forward to reviewing it with you. My other question is what we're going to do between now and when the final construction does come in the spring. So we're going to enter, a season where it's going to be getting darker a lot earlier. We know historically we're going to continue to see crossings at this location. What is the plan between now and then to make sure that we avoid any additional tragedies before we can get to final construction?
Excuse me. My goal, once the barrels and barricades are out and we have enough traffic data for the rest of September and be able to finish the design, we were going to end up, my hope was we were going to be able to get this construction started this spring. But this fall. But number one, one of the things that's happening, as I mentioned on the other project, we can't get signal equipment. It's just, we're not getting it. So one of the things that we have to do is we got to start putting in the order for the signal equipment as early as we can this fall, and to make sure it gets done all at the same time. So like I said, up on Wilbraham Road, we got it all constructed, but there's no signal equipment. So not that people are ignoring it. There's a speed table. It's a raised table, but so I hate to say we're going to have to live with it through the fall, but that's what we're going to end up having to do.
Well, I'm deeply concerned. Whoever is attempting to speak, I'd like you to wait a moment.
Okay, sorry.
Until I'm able to turn it back to the machine. That's okay. So I think that we need to have a conversation about what we're going to do between now and next spring, because I think that we cannot do nothing. I think that, even what is up now is slowing traffic to a certain extent. But we know that historically, if we do nothing, people will continue to cross, and it will continue to present a severe threat to public safety. So we may not come up with that answer tonight, but I would like us to come up with another, unfortunately, temporary solution between now and the spring if construction truly cannot be completed in this cycle.
So Walsh, and then I'm gonna let Betsy speak.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know everybody on this call had our meetings last year, and before that, we all thought something would be done by now. But I have a question. How are people going to know that they need 2 steps to cross the street?
That's all. It's all signed. Right when you get there, it's all set up on the systems and the poles when you get there.
I think that's going to be tricky, and I have to agree. There's an awful lot of people that are not on Facebook and don't have this information, and there should be simpler ways to get it to people. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh. And just in the comments, it was said that if we could share the information and maybe the emails with the museums, and if 311 might be able to announce it on Nextdoor like they used to. Go ahead, Betsy.
Yeah, a couple of things. I first have to reiterate what Deb said. I had thought during this trial period, the barrels might have moved further closer to School Street and down closer to Chestnut to really test whether you could have, in fact, the one lane start right after School Street, or as Deb said, let's continue it. We had another death at State and Dwight, so shouldn't that area just all continue to stay as one through lane with pullover bus lanes or turning lanes? But really, at that point, cars just continue to go in a single lane. And I was under the impression from our meeting, last, when was that, May, that there was going to be more of that, moving the barrels to actually see if the merge lanes could, we're not so that the one lane section of State Street is so limited. So, that's one additional thing. I'm very concerned, and I was under the impression that, we were going to be able to have conversations. And in fact, I emailed you and never heard back about being able to actually go out and do site observations with some of your staff. That has never happened. So that's been a real disappointment to us. On the other hand, I am aware of that project's website, and that's been a great improvement. And we've started to try to publicize that through to the walk bike community. And I'll reiterate that the Armory Quadrangle Civic Association, has had this grant on helping the city improve its communications, and can help continue to spread information about this project that way. And in fact, Kay Simpson with the museum was asked, I'm the one who was communicating to her about this meeting tonight. So I'm definitely in touch with her on that. One of the things I wanted to questions about the design is the speed detections. One thing during this entire winter, a speed detection sign should stay there, telling cars what speed they're going and telling them what speed they're supposed to be going. So if nothing else, that alone will help slow, when it's that back to 2 lanes, will help slow people down a bit. So, and is there a speed detection sign that's a permanent feature of this project when it's completed? Because I think those have been shown to be highly effective, and we need to have that be integral, part of this project. And then just my final question, because I don't get very many opportunities to say things asked directly, but a similar project that there's been this lack of information to the public about is the X. When we've been being told there's going to be no further public hearings about the X project, and yet it was left a long time ago with major concerns. Oh, we keep being told, don't worry, they've been corrected, they've been taken care of. We haven't seen any of these plans. Or has there been any public presentations about what's happening with the X? So I hope the X isn't a situation like, State Street here has been one step better, but still, like everyone else, we've been going too long between hearing what's happening, especially when we were given I thought a commitment that we would get to do some of the monitoring and discussion about the location of the barrels and how the merge is happening during this whole summer, and it hasn't happened. So I'll set up at this point. Thank you.
Just a point on the X. I'm coordinating with the Forest Park Civic Association to either do a presentation in September or October, whatever works for them. I've been in contact with them in the past week to try and set that up.
So will the rest of the city actually hear about this, or only if we happen to stumble upon when the the Forest Park Civic Association. I mean, this is a city, if this project is of interest citywide, the X is all the more of interest citywide. So I hope it will be something that'll be widely publicized. And
It
really
will be
not just the
publicized, but I
Forest
want to
Park
do it, I
meeting.
want to do it through the neighborhood group.
Okay, but as long as the rest of us do get to hear about it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Deborah? You're muted if you're speaking. Deborah?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you speak my name.
Oh,
So just a couple of follow-ups. I understand the concern that a couple of people have said with regard to, you know, how are pedestrians going to know what they do halfway across the street, and why are we closing, you know, only closing one half of the traffic down? A solution to fix both of those that I've seen and I think makes a lot of sense for this project, Chris, would be to offset the two crossings. That you'd come across and there'd be a waiting island, but you'd now move like 3 or 4, maybe 10 feet to go across the other side. And so that it wouldn't be a continuous crossing for the pedestrian. They'd see a change in the pavement, whether it's brick or whatever, and they know that that's where you go to cross, and the button would not be straight where they came out. It'd be offset some. I don't know if that's been considered, but I wanted to mention that that is one solution to that. Also, if we can't, for whatever reason, extend the length of this single lane section toward the river, we could extend it further toward Wilbraham to get the effect that we need. If I'm right, that it doesn't seem like cars are really slowing down. And I too want to say thanks for that website, Chris. I reference it, but it's not being updated on any kind of a regular basis. At least there's nothing new since the first blurb about State Street. And it says at the top that it came out in January and doesn't look like anything else has changed. I'm sure there's been, you know, new projects added, but the project statuses are kind of stagnant once they're up there, it seems.
thank you, Deborah. Elizabeth?
This is going to be super quick, I promise. If you're gathering additional data, I strongly suggest that you move the barrels back onto the lines. Over time, people have bumped them with their cars, and now, particularly coming downhill on State Street, they don't even have to merge into one lane a lot of the time. You'll see cars an inch or two apart trying to go down two lanes. So moving those back into place, I think, will give you better data if that is your goal as stated. The other piece that has been unclear since the barrels went up, and it is additionally unclear on the piece that you shared earlier, which is what does it look like for turning into the parking lot access for the condos and the library/museum parking lot across the street. It has always seemed that the island would make it so that you couldn't turn in there from across the street, but the barrels are set up so that you can turn in. So that's just something to think about, because having people hold up one lane in each direction, anyway, whether or not you can turn in and out to that parking lot into lanes on the other side of the street seems still very up in the air.
No, you will be able to turn in, and that's one of the reasons why we ended up having to push it a little farther, is because we also had to make sure we could get the trucks out of the side of the museum or the library museum as well. So being able to make those turns both in and out of both of those locations are part of the design as far as making sure that can happen.
All right, thank you so much. Go
This
ahead,
is Betsy. Chris, is there an answer to the existence of the speed detection signs? Are they part of the, will they be part of the final design, and could they be up all winter?
Well, the speed detection signs that we have now are actually the police departments. So I have to put requisitions into them to get them to put them on locations. So, I got to go through them to figure out how, if they have them in other places based upon other stuff that they're doing. So is it part of the design right now? No, it's not. Can it be added? Yeah, that's not that big of a deal. Just because we would be using solar anyway. So, and we put a handful of them around around the city. And those things also collect data. So, we get all the speed numbers, we get all the vehicle numbers, all of that. So it becomes a very, very good tool for us. So I think in that area, we would probably want to have them just so that we can collect the data.
Thank you. Are you good, Betsy?
Yeah, I'm well aware of that, and that's why I'm a big proponent of them. And so this is, good news. And or we can think about, somebody's got to have $5,000 so we could even put them up, not have to rely on the police department. But maybe the council could use its clout to get the police department to use these during the winter there. So that at least, and that would be helpful. And also, there's still a fair amount of time between September 9th and the first snowstorm, maybe the third week of October. So I'd hope that we could even at least leave the barrels up, because it gets dark. It's dark during that time period, and it would just, the longer we can keep stuff up there, the better. It would just be, I sort of get a sense that other people are hoping for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All right, thank you. Is there anyone else, any other comments, questions? I think this has been a very informative meeting. I know I have a lot of notes. So I guess we'll close the meeting if there's no other questions, and give you back like 4 minutes or 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please. Go ahead, Councilor Letterman.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to thank you for calling the meeting, and I wanted to thank all the residents and advocates that came out, as well as our staff at the library. We know how important an issue this is for the neighborhood, for the library community, really for the whole city. And I just want to assure everybody that it's definitely something that's at the top of our agenda as the city council. We've been working with you for a number of years to see this to fruition and share in the disappointment about the delay, but want to make sure that, we're doing everything we can in the interim to make it as safe as possible. With that said, Madam Chair, I'm hopeful that you can call another committee meeting at an appropriate time this fall, perhaps towards the end of September, beginning of October, so that we can get a consistent update and be able to provide that to our constituents as well. Because certainly, we've been working to make sure that all of the individual stakeholders are aware, at least of our committee meetings, since we are in control of that. So I'm hopeful we can be able to see that happen again as well.
I agree with that. And that's one of the things that I was actually thinking about. How regularly should we be meeting on this, especially with this project? And we find out information through these meetings. Chris, thank you so much for sharing the Facebook page, the project page. We heard it hasn't been updated, so maybe we can get some updates. But I think communication is key. I've been saying that a lot lately for the last few days, not just here. But I think that's something that we need to make sure that we maintain open and, available to all of us. So I'm definitely going to be calling another meeting on this, probably after, at the end of September sounds good. Maybe every other month until the project is done. So.
Yeah, Councilor Gavan, I would like to know if Kay Simpson has anything to say. She's a big piece of this. What goes on?
Museum, correct?
Well, thank you, Kateri. I joined the meeting late. As Betsy said earlier, she has been keeping me informed. about what's happening, but I didn't actually get a Zoom link. Steve Carey actually sent it to me like halfway through the meeting. I would like to be invited to the future meetings. It's really, really helpful for us at the museums to know what's happening. Some of our staff, as I think others have mentioned tonight, actually do use that parking lot. And so it's really great to know what the experiment has yielded in terms of information about going forward and what it's going to look like, the final project. So thank you, Catering, for
so much.
inviting me to speak.
Should be in the loop. There's no doubt about that.
Excellent. So I have to find out how we get the Zoom link out to the public. I'm not sure how that happens right now, but I'm gonna make sure that you're on it, Ms. Simpson.
It's just, Madam Chair, it's just upon request, any resident can request or stakeholder can request the link right up until the meeting begins, and our staff will send it out. But I've been keeping a list of stakeholders that have been at previous meetings on this. So we'll make sure that Kay, you are added to that as well.
Okay. And
thank you so much.
Springfield@gmail.com. Wow.
And Kay, I have to apologize for not sending it to you.
No, that's okay. I knew you would fill me in.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I just put my email address in the chat box.
I saw that. I'm gonna write it down because I'm not saving the chat. I don't think. Is this chat saved?
Yeah, we have it.
Okay, perfect. All right, great. So we'll have that. Make sure we add you to the list. And if there are no other comments or questions, Chris, thank you so much for coming out and sharing your updates with us, and thank the public, which is what is really important. So we need your input all the time.
Thank you all.
I appreciate you all coming.
Thank you.
And thank you, councilors. See y'all in a little while.